Today, we rank the top 10 coaches in the NFL for 2025. Where does Matt LaFleur fall in these rankings? Tune in to find out.
Yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey. Yeah. Ain't no errors, baby. It's a new era. I wake up early feeling rich like I'm Kesha.
Welcome in another episode of Sounds Gouda. Thank you, everybody, for coming back and taking a listen to us. I am one of your two co-hosts. As always, my name is Rob Ralph, and next to me is my best friend, Jordan Olson. We're excited for any new and returning listeners to come back and take a listen to us. Just know that we do have new content every Wednesday and Saturday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. So please make sure to like, sub, and follow us as you are able. And if you did not know or are a new listener, every 50 subscribers on YouTube, we're going to be giving away some Sounds Gouda swag. So as you can see here, I do have my Sounds Gouda hat on, but just know that you have to be a public subscriber. We got to be able to know who you are and how to reach out to you. So that next tier that we're going to be starting to do that will be number 600. So if you are subscribed, but you're not public, if you're thinking about maybe going public, make sure to unsubscribe, and then subscribe to us again so you can get into these drawings that we're going to be doing every 50 subscribers. So, but as I alluded to, we are going to be diving into the top 10 coaches for the NFL, and we're going to be starting off with some honorable mentions, Jordan.
Yeah, we pretty excited to do this. Last year we did a top 10 quarterback rankings for the season, and this year we're going to do the head coaches as well. We're still going to give you the quarterbacks in a couple weeks here, but who doesn't love a good NFL coaching discussion? Who's on the hot seat? Who's the best? Who gets it done? So we got a couple classic guys on this list that I'm sure members from these fan bases or people who are connected to these coaches are going to say that they deserve to be higher on this list than honorable mention. But our first guy on the honorable mention list is Sean Payton. And Sean Payton obviously has had a remarkable career as an NFL head coach, 179 and 114 overall, 9-9 in the playoffs, 2009 Super Bowl champions, and 2006 NFL Coach of the Year. So, he's doing a great job rebooting that team, the Denver Broncos, and we'll see where he goes from here. And then we had Mike Tomlin, 191 wins, 118 losses, 2 ties, and 8-11 in the playoffs. 2008 Super Bowl champions, with another AFC championship and Super Bowl appearance in 2010. So we know that the Steelers have kind of been in limbo the last number of years. It's pretty hard to get a high draft pick and get a franchise quarterback or a blue chip prospect when you're finishing 18-21 in the, overall rankings, and that's where you're drafting every year. But, he's highly regarded as one of the top coaches. A lot of players are going to like to play for him. Aaron Rodgers is there this year, so we'll see if they get it done. But those are our 2 honorable mentions before we jump into ranking these guys 10 up to 1 who we think is the greatest coach in the game right now and going into the 2025 season. So the rest of the way we plan to do this in tiers. We'll give you coaches 10 and 9. We'll give you a little bit of commentary about that, and then we'll go up the list. Rob, do you want to reveal coaches number 10 and number 9 for us?
Yeah, so number 10, John Harbaugh, the Baltimore Ravens, and number 9, Dan Quinn with the Washington Commanders. So, Jordan, you want to tell us a little bit about John Harbaugh real quick?
Yeah, John Harbaugh has been a really great coach doing it for a really long time. He's got 185 wins to 115 losses overall, and he's 13-11 in the playoffs. Obviously, in the last couple of years, they've made a lot of noise. He won a Super Bowl in 2012, and he's been there twice. 7 AFC North Division titles. So, and the John Harbaugh teams are well disciplined. They come to play tough, great defenses. It's hard not to like what John Harbaugh does every year there. And they're a lot like the Packers. They haven't been around as long as the Packers, so don't, shoot me there. But like certainly in the last 20 years, consistently winning, maybe not getting it done. I mean, they did get it done once in 2012, right? But I mean, you're basically talking the same time frame that the Packers got it done, in 2011. So I don't know. Those are some thoughts about John Harbaugh. Great coach. Would love to play for him. But you have any other thoughts about John, or do you want to talk about how we feel about Dan Quinn?
Well, just real quick on John, I just want to give him a big thanks for beating the San Francisco 49ers in 2012 to not give them their sixth championship. Mr. Joe Flacco, I will never forget that one. But certain coaches, when you think of them, Baltimore Ravens, it's John Harbaugh, right? So he's just a consistent person. He's a consistent winner. He's a very tenured coach, and the organization believes and trusts in him. That's a really good spot for him to be in for the Ravens. Seems like a good organization. And of course, this year, along with other years, previous years with Lamar Jackson, they have a lot of good talent. They just need to get it done in the playoffs. So they haven't been, back to the Super Bowl in 12 plus years. But if I were to be a betting man, I would say that here at some point within the next few years, I would not be shocked to see the Ravens make it to the Super Bowl in the AFC.
Uh-huh. Yeah, preseason means nothing too, but they had that ridiculous like winning streak in the preseason, which I think that takes a lot of coaching and discipline to get those players to buy into showing up and have winning in the preseason mean something for that, long of time. And I don't know how many games it was. I can't remember the number, but it was like many, many years of being undefeated in the preseason. So,
Yeah. Oh,
you
so
know,
go ahead.
go ahead, Rob. Yep, you got it.
I was going to say, so moving on, Dan Quinn, the Washington Commanders, 2024 record was 12-5. His career record, 60-50, combining both the Falcons and Commanders. He is 5-4 in the playoffs. So championships and major achievements. Obviously, he has been a part of the one horrible kind of Super Bowl lost 28-3 to the Patriots. We all remember what happened in that. So one appearance in that, but he obviously did not win that. This last year at least led the Commanders to a 12-5 record with a rookie Jaden Daniels, who's new and upcoming. So did a really good job with that this year. So they have a lot of things that are gonna come for them to be good for this year and the upcoming years. Doing really good at rookie quarterback development. Playoff success this year obviously took him pretty far. Is a defensive coach, so does have strong defensive coordinator pedigree, but obviously some potential criticisms. We know the 28 collapse in the Super Bowl, his Falcons tenure, where he did spend more than a few different years. And then the defense there at the Falcons coming on down the line was a little bit inconsistent at times. So anything you want to touch on as far as Dan Quinn and his tenure so far as an NFL coach?
Yeah, I mean, one interesting point I think as well. A lot of people might ask, well, why is Dan Quinn, who hasn't won a Super Bowl or a championship, above John Harbaugh on this list? I think, this is a list for 2025. The Commanders are clearly on an upward trajectory. We're clearly taking in historical context as well. One thing that stands out to me with Dan Quinn is that, he's been a major contributor to winning everywhere that he's been, whether it's been his defensive coordinator roles with the Seahawks or the Cowboys, or his head coaching records where he's taken the Falcons and the Commanders and turned teams that in both cases that weren't very good when he inherited them and pretty quickly turned them into winners. So I expect the Commanders to win another 11, 12 games this year. I don't know that I can promise they'll be back in another NFC championship game. but yeah, they're clearly a team on an upward trajectory, and he's a great coach. So moving into the next guys on this list. So our number 8 coach overall and the division rival Detroit Lions are not going to be happy, but Dan Campbell is coach number 8 on our top 10 list. And John's brother Jim is coach number 7 on this list. So Jim Harbaugh with the Los Angeles Chargers is number 7 for 2025. So Rob, I'll give you the first crack. You want to give the folks a little info about why we ranked Dan Campbell at 8?
Dan Campbell, yeah, Detroit Lions, very good. 2024 record, obviously 15-2. The number 1 seed in the NFC. That is how they hang their banners. Record 46, 37-1. Playoff record 2-2. Before we get down into championships and major achievements, just the absolute hell that the Detroit Lions have been in for many decades. So, a combo of getting the right GM and Brad Holmes over there, who we'll give a ton of credit to, and giving Dan Campbell his chance at being an NFL head coach has really revitalized this organization, obviously, right? And then we all know the trade for Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff, who's I remember at the time too was like, what the heck are they doing? That does not make sense. But they knew exactly what they were doing because it has led them to a ton of success. Championships, major achievements, 0 wins, 0 appearances in the Super Bowl, conference championships, 1 NFC championship appearance, lost that, and then division titles, 2 NFC North titles, 2023 and 2024. But as I just alluded to, a historic turnaround, transformed that the Lions from 3-13 to 15-2 and the number 1 seed. 2024 set a team franchise record with 15 wins. Obviously, was really integral into a cultural change for the Lions. Had some really good coordinators that he put in really good spots. Aaron Glenn was already with the Detroit Lions, but bringing in Ben Johnson as his offensive coordinator, who we all know is now the Bears head coach, really did a lot of good things with Jared Goff and that team, and did a lot of good player development too. So, first Lions playoff win since 1991 and first division sweep ever for the Lions too. But some potential criticisms or some things that might be hurting his ranking. Limited playoff success, only 2-2. Criticism for failed 4th down attempts in NFC Championship. We all know that Dan Campbell loves to really go for it. And only 4 seasons as a head coach, but still building his resume and no championships yet. Any sort of thing that you'd bring up as far as Dan Campbell goes?
I think the big question is going to be, how can a guy that has had so much success over the last 2 years only be ranked 8th on this list? And I'll tell you where Rob and I came to this conclusion is that, while Dan Campbell is the Ted Lasso motivator of this all, if you haven't seen Ted Lasso, I recently finished that. I binged it, and I see a lot of similarities in these two guys, but a lot of talk about how talented those 2 coordinators are and the X's and O's. So, Dan Campbell is definitely on this list as a motivator, a culture builder, but we will see if he can sustain that success in 2025. And if it was heavily on the likes of Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, then, he's going to be ranked right where we think he's going to be ranked. And if they go out and they win another 13 games, Rob and I are going to eat crow, and he should definitely be like in the top 3 on this list. But right now, we're kind of hedging on the fact that, a lot of that X's and O's came from those coordinators, and that's why he sits where he sits. So talking about who's ahead of him on this list, Jim Harbaugh. So last year, yeah, he is. Too many bad memories with the 49ers. But last year, he had an 11-6 record. He turned around the Los Angeles Chargers. He has an outstanding NFL career record, 60, 29-1, combining his records from the 49ers and Chargers, and he's 5-4 in the playoffs. been to one Super Bowl, losing to his brother, John, back in 2012. 3 NFC championship appearances with the 49ers. And then obviously has had success in college, both with Stanford and then winning the national championship at Michigan. I know we're not talking about college football, but clearly, whoever this man is coaching, college or professional, he wins. So, last year he ended a 5-year playoff drought. I think he's going to be the perfect person to work with Herbert and that crew, kind of turning. He's kind of doing a similar thing to what Matt LaFleur is doing, but he wants to turn the Chargers into a little bit more run-first team. That's kind of his bread and butter. But, I think that he's going to continue to put the Chargers back into the playoffs this coming year. Not promising any playoff wins or, AFC championship appearances, but I think the Chargers are going to be a solid team again. And I think a lot of that is due to Jim Harbaugh's effort as a coach.
All right. Yep. Moving on. So next up, and our next here is somebody we are very familiar with, but we'll give some more context into it. But Kevin O'Connell from the Minnesota Vikings and Matt LaFleur, number 5 for the Green Bay Packers. So, Jordan, you want to touch on these a little bit?
This is our NFC North tier, right? Who you're not going to see on this list just yet is Ben Johnson, so Bears fans don't get excited. But Kevin O'Connell, we had a lot of discussion, Rob and I, about Kevin O'Connell, where he fit into this list. We had justification for having him as high as number 4 on this list at one point in time. And, we settled on him being 6th on this list. Did a tremendous job last year with Sam Darnold. Took a team that most early season predictors, including ourselves, picked Minnesota to finish either 3rd or 4th in the division, and clearly finished 2nd in the division. And any other division would have been a first place team. So the Minnesota Vikings had a hell of a year last year. Won 2004 NFL Coach of the Year. Has one division title in 2022. Oh, his track record in his 3 years as a coach is outstanding. He's got high praise for developing quarterbacks. We'll see how that translates to JJ McCarthy. But he sits at 6 on our list and below Matt LaFleur because he doesn't have the proven playoff wins. He's 0-2 in the playoffs right now. He hasn't won a Super Bowl. And, frankly, Matt LaFleur has been doing it for a lot longer, has the long-term success, has been to, 2 NFC championship games, although losses, and we're going to talk about Matt LaFleur a little bit more in a minute, but we'd be pretty hard-pressed to take a guy who has, twice the track record and, a few more accolades and put him below Kevin O'Connell on this list. And we had an honest discussion. We tried not to be biased in this ranking, and this is how we ended up. So you got anything to add about Kevin O'Connell before you talk about Matt LaFleur, Rob?
I would say, on this list too, as you guys have heard us talk about, we have a lot of praise for Kevin O'Connell. So me and Jordan were going kind of back and forth on where, justifiably with a full length resume that he should fall on this list and why Matt LaFleur should be above him. But Kevin O'Connell is a very, very good head coach. And I will tell you one thing, that if he does the same thing he did with that roster this year with JJ McCarthy, I think that they do have probably one of, if not the best rosters in the NFL. Kind of their only question mark is that quarterback position. He will be ranked a little bit higher, but when you took into effect the full length of the resume and the successes that each one of these head coaches has had, this is where we've had Kevin O'Connell. Well, going on, Matt LaFleur, the Green Bay Packers. So 2024 record, obviously last year 11-6, 70-38 career record, playoff record, not quite as good, but 3-5. So championships and major achievements, 0 Super Bowl wins and 0 appearances. conference championships, obviously the one NFC championship appearance against the Buccaneers, but we lost that one. Division titles, 3 NFC North titles. So, some key points just to mark on Matt LaFleur for justifying this ranking. 70-38 career record, so that's pretty good. Immediate success coming in with Aaron Rodgers, 2019 and 2020, when Rodgers won those MVPs. Maximize Aaron Rodgers, final seasons in Green Bay, right? So did a really good job of that, coming in and doing that. Young coach, part of the Sean McVay coaching tree too. So came from that, along with Kevin O'Connell. And then consistently making the playoffs. Made the playoffs 4 out of 6 seasons, which is pretty good. So some potential criticisms for him, though. Obviously, the playoff record, not as good, 3-5. Has not reached a Super Bowl. Can be a little bit conservative, that conservative approach. He's not Dan Campbell, that is for sure. So he has been criticized for some of the play calling and whatnot, and going for it. And then, some post Rodgers questions. Success without elite quarterback remains to be proven. But, as we've talked about too, we both believe that Jordan Love still has a lot of room to grow. And we believe that the numbers show that Jordan Love is an elite quarterback. So we'll see how that goes this year. But it's got a lot of really great things for Matt LaFleur to be successful now into the future. What are your thoughts on Matt LaFleur, Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, for the sake of not being too long-winded, right? We talk about Matt LaFleur a lot, but I think he's an offensive, a great offensive play caller, one of the top 3 or 4 in this game. I think you saw that last year when Malik Willis came in, so I think that he can get it done without Aaron Rodgers. Obviously NFC championships and Super Bowls speak. So, and that's really the measure for the Green Bay Packers in general. It's championships, division titles, things like that. Even though we're not winning, hanging division title championship banners, at the beginning of the year, those are always the objectives, right? Win the division, win the championship, win the playoffs, or sorry, win the Super Bowl. So at the end of the day, that's what Matt LaFleur will be judged on. And, in a future episode, we're going to talk about this. There's already been some conversation now about Ed Policy putting Matt LaFleur on the hot seat because his contract's up in 2 years. And, he cited winning as the number one objective, right? Winning was the number one objective, and that, is clearly going to be taken into consideration moving forward. So number 4 and 3 on this list. So we have Sean McDermott, head coach of the Buffalo Bills, at number 4, and Kyle Shanahan, Packers killer, from the San Francisco 49ers, at number 3 on this list. Just to get into Sean McDermott, why he's number 4 on our list, he has an excellent, career record at 93-52. He's 7-7 in the playoffs. He clearly has Josh Allen there, who's been helping him. And I certainly think that Josh Allen is easily one of the top 3 quarterbacks in this league. So when you pair a really good coach with a really good quarterback, you're going to have a lot of success. But they won 5 consecutive AFC East titles from 2020 through 2024. They have not gotten it done in terms of a conference championship or a Super Bowl appearance, but obviously they've been right on the cusp there. They've dealt with some of the same challenges the Packers have dealt with in terms of, cap construction and some things like that. So, even though he hasn't gotten it done, they've been a model of consistency in terms of winning that division. And I think that they're right there. And every year I kind of pull for the Bills to be the team that's representing the Super Bowl in the AFC. So we'll see if Sean McDermott can get it done this upcoming season. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on Sean McDermott, Rob?
Yeah, very good head coach. Really, too, what it comes down to is if the Bills can get over the hump and beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. 0-4 against Andy Reid's Chiefs. So that's a big outlier. Same thing with the Packers, with the 49ers. Can we beat the 49ers in the playoffs? Everybody, has got that team that kind of really has your number here lately. But if I think that they will get over it eventually, they just have too good of talent, too good of quarterback. I mean, they are very consistent. So, again, like I said about the Ravens earlier, I will say the same thing about the Bills. If I were to be a betting man, there is no doubt that the Bills will be in a Super Bowl appearance here shortly within the next few years. So, Kyle Shanahan, San Francisco 49ers. 2024 record 6-11, not as good last year, but his career record 78-66. Playoff record 8-4, which is the highest playoff winning percentage among coaches without a Super Bowl win. So he has been to the playoffs often in his career, obviously making it to the Super Bowl more than a few times, but has not won the chip quite yet. So championships and major achievements. So obviously, like I was just alluding to, Super Bowls, 0 wins, but 2 appearances, lost both of them. Conference championships, 4 NFC championship appearances, 3 NFC West titles. So, as I was just talking about playoff excellence with him and getting to the Super Bowl a couple of times, is a consistent contender. I've done a really good job with those rosters, 4 NFC championship games. Uh, Offensive, widely regarded, obviously, as an offensive genius, and has done a lot of really good development success with multiple quarterbacks, both with Garoppolo and now with Purdy, who they just signed. And then his coaching tree is very, very extensive. So many of his assistants hired as coordinators or head coaches league wide. Potential criticisms, but we just touched on it. Super Bowl collapses, big game struggles. He can never seem to get it done in the Super Bowl. I am very, very happy about that, just knowing he is the 49ers head coach, because the Packers have stunk pretty well against the 49ers. 2024 disaster last year, only 6-11 with a lot of drama on that team. So overtime decision criticized for playoff overtime strategy versus the Chiefs, and then has had some injury prone teams, multiple seasons derailed by injuries to key players. But Jordan, what do you think about Kyle Shanahan? There's a reason he's up here on this list. He's very good, has had a lot of assistants that have been hired underneath him, is an offensive guru, but just can't really seem to get over that last part of that road and getting over that hump. What are your thoughts on Kyle Shanahan?
Yeah, he's going to be in the top 3 on this list for a while, You look at Dan Marino and some of the other guys, right? You're not always defined by the championship, although, that is the bar for success. And, unless the 49ers take a big dive here for the foreseeable future, obviously they're going through a little bit of a rebuild right now. He's going to be up there on this list. So a lot of respect for him, even though I hate facing the 49ers. But, clearly, if not the best, one of the top offensive minds in the game. So, all right, on to the final 2 on our list. So, the number 2 coach on the list for right now in 2025, but Sean McVay from the Los Angeles Rams is number 2 on this list. And it's not going to be a big surprise, or it shouldn't be a big surprise to you who's number 1 on this list, but Andy Reid, the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs, the Godfather himself. Those are number 2 and number 1 on our list. So Sean McVay, why is he number 2? Again, great overall record, 88-57, but you look at what he's done the last 2 years with the Rams. Obviously, the Rams went all in a couple years ago to win the Super Bowl. He's been to the Super Bowl multiple times, not only with Jared Goff rebooting, getting there and winning with Matthew Stafford. They had a little bit of a hiccup because they had to work through all of the draft picks and things they traded to acquire Matt Stafford immediately after, that window was up. And now in the last 2 years, they've rebuilt this team. Like the Packers, they're one of the younger teams in the NFL. And, they've made some playoff noise. Their trajectory is moving up. And I can't help to think that a lot of that, if not most of that, has to do with Sean McVay leading a young and talented group. Got to give their GM credit too for bringing those players back and building that. But, leading a young team to success early. And I expect the Rams to be right in the mix, in the thick of the playoff picture in the NFC this year. You talk about another guy from the Shanahan tree, offensive, genius as well. So, he's going to be in this top 5 for a long time, I would imagine. But yeah, that's what I think about Sean McVay. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Rob.
Every year you're thinking, okay, the Rams might be not do as well, with some of the stuff that they do and turnover with the roster. But man, Sean McVay and the Los Angeles Rams just are consistently in it, do a really good job, offensive guru. So, Sean McVay is one of the best to do it and has the pedigree, championships, and major achievements to put forward with that too. So that is why Sean McVay is number 2 on our list.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on to the number 1, Andy Reid. This is not a shocker. You all know Andy Reid has been in the Super Bowl for 500 years straight. No, but his 2024 record, 15-2. Obviously what really defines the Kansas City Chiefs is getting Patrick Mahomes. I know everyone's going to say duh, but they had quite the mark on wanting to get Patrick Mahomes. He sat for a year and then he started up that next year, I remember, and it's been history ever since. So overall record for Andy Reid, 301, 163-1, so 4th in NFL history for total wins, which is absolutely incredible. Obviously, that comes with his tenure with the Eagles as well. Regular season, 258, 144-1, and his playoff record, 28-17, so second most playoff wins in NFL history, only behind Mr. Bill Belichick. So championships and major achievements, but 3 wins, Super Bowl wins, 2019, 2022, and 2023, with 5 appearances, conference championships, 5 AFC, and one NFC. AFC championship games, 7 consecutive, um, 2018 to 2024, and then division titles. This is pretty crazy, but 17 in total. So 9 consecutive AFC West from 2016 to 2024. What can we say a little bit more about Andy Reid? He is an absolute dynasty builder. Only coach to win back-to-back Super Bowls in 20 plus years in 2022 and 23. And then postseason mastery, 28-16 and 28-16 in the playoffs. 28-17 in the playoffs. Reached 5 Super Bowls in 6 years. Just historical consistency. We know that Andy Reid was once upon a time a positional coach with the Green Bay Packers. Back with a few of those other ones that were on those teams with Brett Favre. So a lot of versatility, right? So had McNabb as a quarterback and now too as well with Patrick Mahomes, but only coach to win 100 plus games with 2 different franchises. Clutch performance, 30-7 record coming off buys, weeks, and extra preparation. And then 39 current Chiefs players have Super Bowl experience. So, some potential criticisms, maybe early Chiefs playoff struggles, 1-4 record before Mahomes. Some criticism in game management and close playoff games, but that's just really when you're getting into the weeds of everything. We're trying to find some things, for potential criticism for Andy Reid. And then, relies heavily on elite quarterback play for recent success. But if you have a good quarterback, you're obviously going to be doing very well no matter what team or organization that you are in. But Andy Reid is just the creme de la creme. He's the top tier coach, and the championships pedigree and resume definitely justify that. What are your thoughts on Andy Reid?
Oh, you hit most of the good stuff. The only thing I'll add is his non-chief stuff, really, right? Like, I already thought he was one of the, best coaches in the league when he was with the Philadelphia Eagles. Had a hard time believing at the time they moved on with him shortly after he was in the Super Bowl with Donovan McNabb. So I think that Andy Reid has been doing it for a really long time with multiple teams. Obviously he didn't win a Super Bowl with the Eagles, but had some really good teams with them. So a lot of respect for Andy Reid. Obviously, one time former Packers assistant, cut his teeth there underneath that tree. You know, I'm hoping Andy Reid doesn't win any more Super Bowls because I'm sick of the Chiefs winning Super Bowls, but a lot of respect for what the man does. So as we recorded this episode, or actually after recording the episode, we figured out that we had an obvious omission from our list. One big omission is that we did not have Nick Sirianni in our original top 10 or honorable mentions. And we need to make this right at the end of the episode here. So it's a little wonky, but we're going to insert Nick Sirianni. He's going to be fourth on our list, and we'll talk about how that bumps everything around here in a second. But by inserting Nick Sirianni in the list, you want to talk about some of the factors, Rob, that brought us to the conclusion of putting him up there behind Reid, McVay, and Shanahan.
Yeah, I think we'll just have to put the Eagles' pain of kicking our butt last year, the beginning of the season and the end of the season, to bed. But that's the real reason we left Nick Sirianni off this list, to be honest. Just kidding. So obviously won the Super Bowl. Had a really good year, 40-20 in the regular season, 6-3 in the playoffs. So 2 Super Bowl appearances. Obviously, one of them lost to the Chiefs in a really thrilling game that Jordan and I won't ever forget because we were at Jordan's bachelor party at Lake Tahoe. And he won, obviously, this last year and beat the Chiefs, dominating them. Obviously, in 2024, made some significant hires for his coordinators, and Kellen Moore, previously from Dallas, and then Mr. Too High Shell himself, Vic Fangio, was the DC. He came over from Miami, where he was there, I think, for a few years. And then, what was it, in 23, Sean Desai came over from the Seahawks as a defensive assistant. The offensive coordinator is Brian Johnson, who was an internal promotion, and we all know kind of what happened with that. After 2022, though, the Cardinals, after 2022, they lost in the Super Bowl. The Cardinals ended up making Jonathan Gannon their head coach, and then Sean Steichen obviously became the Colts head coach. Sirianni, in my opinion, went from a very probably going to get fired, not looking good, losing, 6, 7, 8 games in a row, something like that. Hey, let's get Saquon Barkley and hire some really good coordinators, and let's make a run at this. Obviously, we know what Saquon Barkley did and really propelled that team quite a bit last year with all their other really good additions. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, really good offensive line, really good running game to boot. So that's kind of my 2 cents on Nick Sirianni. Jordan, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, you made a lot of good points there, right? I think the thing with Sirianni, he's got a great track record in 4 seasons. He's won a lot of games. He's had a tremendous amount of talent to work with. And you can't really take that away from him. But you also have to credit that to, his success as well. Same can be said for Kyle Shanahan and all the success that he's had with all the weapons available to him. So yeah, Nick Sirianni becomes fourth on our list. And how does that play out? You can see the visual here. We've updated it at the end of our video. So with Sirianni becoming fourth on the list, We ended up bumping out Dan Quinn, and Rob and I had a discussion to keep John Harbaugh on this list. It's just hard to take John Harbaugh off the list after all the success he's had. He's won a Super Bowl. We still think Dan Quinn, he's going to be on our honorable mention category now. But, basically this is how the final list shakes out for us. So it's going to be Andy Reid, number 1, Sean McVay, number 2, Kyle Shanahan, number 3, Nick Sirianni, number 4, Sean McDermott, number 5, Matt LaFleur, number 6, Kevin O'Connell, number 7, Jim Harbaugh, number 8, Dan Campbell, number 9, and John Harbaugh, number 10, with Mike Tomlin, Sean Payton, and Dan Quinn making our honorable mention list. So, obviously this is going to, probably shake things up in our comments. We'd love for you to, kind of comment, let us know what you think, give us your own rankings. I think there's an argument for a lot of these guys to be moved around the list. So let us know what you think, and we'll be sure to get back to you with our thoughts. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. We know that there's going to be a lot of conversation, or hopefully you have a lot of conversation, whether it's, with it yourself in your own head and just say Rob and Jordan are full of shit, excuse my language. Or if you agree with us, this will be a fun episode to comment on. Let us know, where you think these guys stand. Did we get it right with Matt LaFleur? Is he, ranked appropriately, or do you have other guys in the NFC North or other coaches ranked ahead of him? Let us know. We'd love to have some constructive conversation. That's the best thing out there to enjoy and kind of get through this dead period in the off season. So just remember, we've got new content every Wednesday and Saturday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. As always, we want to thank you for being here and listening, interacting with us. Make sure to subscribe, like, and follow. Connect with us on X at Sounds Gouda or Olson Jord, or on YouTube. We have a lot of conversation there in the comments. But until next time, Packers Nation, have a Gouda morning, a Gouda afternoon, and a Gouda night.
Go Pack.
Pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey.